Procrastination is rarely a failure of time management. Most people who put off important tasks know how to manage their calendars, and they understand full well the consequences of delay. Yet, despite the impending stress, they clean the kitchen, check notifications, or suddenly find an urgent need to organize spreadsheets. At its core, procrastination is an emotion regulation problem, not a character flaw or a lack of discipline. We delay tasks not because we are lazy, but because we are trying to manage negative mood states. Boredom, anxiety, self-doubt, or overwhelmed feelings triggered by the task itself. The neurological tug-of-war. Behind every moment of procrastination lies a battle between two distinct parts of the brain. The limbic system, the immediate reward center, one of the oldest structures in the human brain, the limbic system seeks immediate gratification and pain avoidance. It operates on autopilot, demanding fast relief from discomfort. The prefrontal cortex, the long-term planner, located right behind the forehead, this region handles executive functions, planning, impulse control, and long-term decision-making. When faced with a difficult or ambiguous task, the prefrontal cortex attempts to focus on the future benefit. For example, finishing this report will advance my career. However, the limbic system perceives the current discomfort. For example, this report is confusing and stressful as a threat. Because short-term emotional relief feels far more immediate than long-term future rewards. A cognitive vulnerability known as present bias, the limbic system frequently wins out, the underlying psychological triggers. If procrastination stems from emotional avoidance, what specific emotions are we running from? 1. Perfectionism and fear of failure. Perfectionists often equate performance with worth. If a task feels high stakes, delaying it acts as a self-protective mechanism. As long as you haven't finished the work, your potential hasn't officially been judged. Procrastination provides a convenient cushion. If the result is poor, you can blame a lack of time rather than a lack of ability. 2. Task ambiguity and cognitive load. The brain naturally resists tasks with unclear starting points. When an objective is framed vaguely, such as fix my finances or write a research paper, the prefrontal cortex struggles to map out the execution path. The resulting cognitive overload prompts the brain to flee toward low-friction activities with clear, simple feedback loops like social media or chores. 3. The illusion of future self. Functional MRI studies reveal that when people think about their future selves, the brain lights up in patterns similar to when thinking about complete strangers. We treat our future self as a superhero with infinite energy and willpower who will happily handle tomorrow what we don't want to handle today. When tomorrow arrives, however, that future self turns out to be the exact same person, facing the exact same emotional friction. Closing the intention-action gap. Understanding that procrastination is driven by emotional self-preservation changes how we approach solving it. Pushing harder with willpower or shaming yourself usually backfires, as self-blame increases stress, triggering even more procrastination. Breaking the cycle requires lowering the emotional barrier to entry. Shrink the initial step, reduce the task until the emotional friction disappears. For example, write one sentence, open the document, or spend exactly 2 minutes. Clarify the concrete action. Replace vague goals with precise, step-by-step physical actions. Practice self-compassion. Acknowledging that delay stems from a normal psychological impulse reduces the shame loop, making it easier to re-engage with the work. We constantly procrastinate because our brains are wired to prioritize current emotional comfort over hypothetical future gain. By treating delay as a signal of emotional friction rather than laziness, we can design environments and habits that make starting far easier than avoiding. What are the best evidence-based psychological strategies to manage task anxiety and start difficult work? Manage task anxiety and initiate difficult work by lowering the emotional friction and cognitive load associated with starting. Because task anxiety is an emotional defense mechanism, the brain's attempt to avoid feelings of inadequacy, uncertainty, or failure. Effective strategies work with neurobiology to trick or soothe the threat response, amygdala, into letting executive functions take over. Here are the most effective evidence-based psychological strategies. 1. Micro-stepping the 5-minute rule / lowering the barrier to entry. The brain often views a large project as a massive, threatening monolith. When an objective feels overwhelming, the amygdala triggers a low-level fight or flight response. urging you to seek safety in trivial tasks. The strategy: shrink the action down to a size so small that your brain feels zero resistance or threat. How to apply: give yourself explicit permission to work on the task for just 5 minutes or even 2 minutes. Tell yourself, I only have to type 3 sentences / organize 1 row of the spreadsheet, and then I am allowed to stop. Why it works: procrastination is primarily an initiation problem, not an execution problem. Once you cross the threshold of starting, momentum usually takes over, and the perceived difficulty of the task drops significantly. Point 2. Implementation intentions. If-then planning. Vague goals, for example. I need to write that report this afternoon, require continuous decision-making from an already anxious prefrontal cortex. This creates decision fatigue, making avoidance far more likely. The strategy: pre-decide the exact time, place, and action using the formula. If, then I will. How to apply: if it is 10:00 a.m. at my desk, then I will open the client brief and write the bulleted outline. Why it works: developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer, meta-analyses show that if-then plans double to triple the likelihood of goal execution by transferring control of behavior to situational cues, bypassing internal debate and anxiety. Point 3. Productive self-compassion and shame reduction. Many people believe self-criticism and harsh discipline drive productivity. In reality, self-blame generates negative emotions, guilt, shame, which directly fuel the very emotional distress that caused procrastination in the first place. The strategy: explicitly forgive past delays and approach starting with neutral curiosity rather than judgment. How to apply: acknowledge the anxiety aloud or in writing. I feel anxious about this project because I want it to be great, and that is a normal reaction. I don't need to feel perfect to start. Why it works: a milestone study by Timothy Pychyl and Michael Wolff found that students who forgave themselves for procrastinating on an exam were significantly less likely to procrastinate on the next exam. Self-compassion breaks the procrastination shame loop. Point 4. Constructing sloppy drafts, lowering perfectionist standards. Perfectionism creates high task anxiety because it ties the immediate quality of the work directly to personal self-worth. If the work must be flawless, starting feels terrifying. The strategy: decouple starting from quality by intentionally aiming for a low-grade first draft. How to apply: label your initial attempt as 0 draft or a junk draft. Give yourself full permission to write incoherent sentences, use placeholder figures, or write bullet points instead of full paragraphs. Why it works: lowering the standards removes the threat of failure. It is exponentially easier to edit a flawed draft than it is to create something brilliant on a blank page. Point 5. Visualizing the process, not the outcome. Visualization is a popular self-help tool, but visualizing success, for example, imagining receiving praise or finishing the project, often backfires because it tricks the brain into feeling temporary satisfaction without doing the work. The strategy: use process simulation instead of outcome simulation. How to apply: spend 60 seconds visualizing yourself taking the uncomfortable first steps, opening the software, sitting through the initial 5 minutes of confusion, and systematically solving the first small problem. Why it works: research from UCLA shows that simulating the process required to reach a goal reduces task anxiety and improves planning execution, whereas visualizing the end result increases performance anxiety. Point 6. Time boxing with guaranteed breaks, the Pomodoro technique. Anxiety often stems from the fear of endless discomfort, the feeling that once you start a dreadful task, you will be trapped in it indefinitely. The strategy: define clear temporal boundaries around your work. How to apply: set a timer for 25 minutes of focused work, followed by a strict 5-minute break. During the 25 minutes, your sole objective is focus, not completion. Why it works: time boxing provides an explicit light at the end of the tunnel. The brain can tolerate discomfort far more effectively when it knows the exact minute the discomfort will end.